It was the summer of 1997, just over 25 years ago. My wife and I were going to the concert, having known of the solo artist's prior work, even going back to his time with the former band he was in. But for the vast majority of people in attendance, they came to see him sing the hit, the number one hit. Up next, I'm going to discuss the career of Bob Carlisle, more than a one-hit wonder, coming up on Andrew's Journey in Christian Contemporary Music. Welcome to Andrew's Journey in Christian Contemporary Music, where we dive into the classics, discover what's new, and demonstrate the originals. Hey, if you're into all things Christian Contemporary Music, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget, if you like this video, to give it a thumbs up. Climb aboard, let's do the CCM journey together. And just as a reminder, I have created a Spotify playlist called Dive into the Classics. In it are songs and our albums that I've mentioned in previous Dive into the Classics episodes, and will also include songs from the artists I'll be discussing in this episode. The link to the Dive into the Classics playlist are in the description below. Life as a one-hit wonder artist. On the one hand, there must be a sense of, I've made it, as millions are suddenly listening to you. On the other hand, I wonder if the artist is also saying, but hey, I've got all this other music too. As my wife and I watched Bob Carlisle perform in the summer of '97, I couldn't help but wonder if both these thoughts were going through Bob's head simultaneously. Nevertheless, we were there to celebrate the artist's body of work, not just the hit. So who is Bob Carlisle? You may be watching and only know him as the Butterfly Kisses guy. You may be too young to remember the 1997 number one song Phenomenon, or you may know a good chunk, if not all, of his career. Bob Carlisle, now 66, was in 3 bands that I'm aware of prior to launching his solo career. In the 70s, Bob was briefly in the band Psalm 150, who were around from 1971 to 1976. In 1978, he was brought into a session as a bass player that ended up forming the new wave power pop group Billy Thermal. The band broke up after a couple of years as they never got the big break they needed before the California power pop music fad started to fade. Being the incredibly versatile vocalist that he was, and being a part of the California scene, Bob was a singer for hire, performing background vocals for everyone from Barry Manilow to REO Speedwagon, from Sandy Patty to Petra. But perhaps what Bob was best known for prior to his solo career was the lead singer of the CCM pop rock band Allies, that were together from late 1984 through 1992. The band was formed by Randy Thomas mere months after his former group, Sweet Comfort Band, called it quits. He called up Bob and drummer Jim Erickson, who was also formerly of Psalm 150, and keyboardist Sam Scott and bassist Matt Chapman, that Randy Thomas knew from another band that they were a part of. They put out their debut album, Allies, in 1985. They performed at a Christian music festival that I attended in '85, and it was there that I witnessed Bob Carlisle's incredible vocals for the first time. I was so impressed with Bob and the entire band that I went over to the merch tent afterwards and purchased their debut album on vinyl. And there it is. And yes, when I saw them perform, they did perform in these military fatigues. Catchy pop hooks, rocking sometimes, ballads and other times. Randy lays down some great tight guitar solos. It was a great debut album by a group of guys that could write and perform some memorable tunes, and the vocal prowess of Bob Carlisle was in the middle of it all. I would go on and buy the second and third albums from Allies, Virtues from 1986, and the 1987 release Shoulder to Shoulder. Both real good albums as well. Virtues had some darker moments on it. Check out the opening track, Hardened Hearts, or the final track, and one of my favorites, Running Out of Time. Shoulder to Shoulder is a little bit lighter. On that one, check out the rocking You're All I Needed. Allies would go on to release 3 additional albums, which I never owned, but have checked out a few times on Spotify. In 1989, they released Long Way from Paradise. The River came out in 1990. And lastly, in 1992, they put out Man with a Mission. Some decent songs on these releases, but for me, not as consistent as the first 3 albums. They would disband after Man with a Mission. This would open the door to Bob Carlisle to go solo and with more of a pop, blue-eyed soul slant in the same musical lane as someone who was huge at the time in the mainstream, Michael Bolton. Carlisle went on to release his first self-titled solo album in June of 1993, which I got here on CD. It kicks off with the brass-filled soul number, Mind, Body, Heart, and Soul, complete with Bob's vocal sounding as good as ever. It charted number 7 on the U.S. Christian charts. 4 other singles made those charts as well. My personal favorite on this album is the song Use Me. Bob puts in an incredible vocal performance, and renowned session guitarist Dan Huff provides some killer work. Love it. Bob's second solo release, The Hope of a Man, came out in late 1994, which I also have here on CD. It also produced a couple of singles that hit the U.S. Christian Top 20 chart. My favorite from this album has to be When a Grown Man Cries. Again, Bob shows the power in his voice, so epic. It would be 2.5 years later, in May of 1997, that Bob would release his third solo album, Shades of Grace. Little did he know that a song that he co-wrote with longtime friend Randy Thomas, a song written for his daughter's 16th birthday, would make him a household name. Butterfly Kisses became so big that they decided to re-release the album as Butterfly Kisses, Shades of Grace, presumably so that people could more easily identify the CD when they went into the store to buy it. It quickly became the wedding song that year, and for years after. Butterfly Kisses went to number 1 on the adult contemporary charts in both the US and in Canada. The album went gold in Australia, platinum in Canada, and double platinum in the US. Carlisle also produced a book, which I have, based on the song. An artist that paid his dues got his due. Safe to say, unexpectedly. Bob Carlisle would release 2 more solo albums, Stories from the Heart in 1998 and Nothing But the Truth in 2000. In 1999, he appeared on a Clay Cross song as part of a trio with B.B. Winans. The song is called I Will Follow Christ. And if you aren't familiar with it, look it up on YouTube. A powerful song with 3 of the best male vocalists in CCM. To some, Bob Carlisle may be just the guy who sung Butterfly Kisses, but to me, he goes down as one of the best vocalists in CCM, who had a pretty solid body of work over a couple of decades. But how about you? When did you first discover Bob Carlisle? From Allies? From earlier than Allies? From his solo career? When you first heard Butterfly Kisses? Maybe you haven't discovered him yet. Whatever the case, I would love to hear from you. Leave me a comment and let me know your Bob Carlisle stories. Well, that's it. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up for this video, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. Take care. God bless, and bye for now.